Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fifth episode of Unmasking Motherhood, where we have real conversations with women mothers from all walks of life in an attempt to pull back the veil on what you see on the outside. We all make judgments and impressions, it's human, right? But through these conversations, you really get to see depths of people that you wouldn't know had you not had the honor of hearing their story. So keep in mind as you're listening that it's actually a true gift to hear someone's story. And my hope is that through these interview conversations that you not only feel less judgment towards yourself and less alone in your mothering journey, but towards the other women and mothers in your life. Maybe you'll see yourself through my guest story today. Maybe you'll see your own best friend. And through doing so, have more compassion, more grace, more awareness of how to love yourself and others more deeply and just feel less alone. So these conversations have the two parts, hence the name Unmasking, where we're going to see the outside, and then we'll pull back the mask to go a little bit deeper into the guest story. So my guest today is Kim. Hi, Kim.
Hi.
I'm so excited to have Kim on, and it wasn't a question if I'd ever ask you to be on. Kim and I talk almost every day. She and I go back to 2018 whenever I finally decided to go to my life coaching program and we had an in-person retreat. I remember meeting you. There's a group of, I really don't remember how many, but it felt like 30 to 40 women, like a decent sized group.
Yeah.
And everyone was like talking and conversing. And I think at the time we were in similar stages of our faith. I think
hmm
maybe that was what it was. And I was like, oh, I need to
I
stay
think it was, yeah.
close to you. And regardless, I'm so grateful for that because we have stayed in touch and become, I feel like just soul sisters through mothering journey, marriage journey, coaching journey,
Yeah.
all the things. And you've really been a person I feel like I can tell anything, and that is such a gift. So I'm really excited to have Kim on. I mean, as you'll find out, she became a mom just a little over a year ago and had a journey to get there. And it's such a treat to have one of my closest friends here today. So
Mm.
thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. And this is just a joy and a pleasure, and all the things that you shared. I just feel honored and likewise, and can't wait to dive in together.
So let's do that. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm
Question.
ready.
Okay, so we know your name's Kim, but for those who don't know you, where do you live and where are you from originally, if it's not where you are now?
Yeah, so I live where I'm from, which is Richmond, Virginia.
Amazing. Okay, are you in a partnership marriage? And how many children do you have?
Yes, married for 6 years with one child.
Okay, how'd you meet your husband?
Oh, this is a wild story, but yeah, don't know how deep we want to get into this one right now, but this is like the biggest kind of like divine download I've ever received in my life. Was that I didn't know why, but I just knew I was supposed to go to this entrepreneur conference in Bend, Oregon. And I didn't know how, and I didn't know why, and I didn't have the money at the time, but I just knew in my spirit that I was supposed to meet someone there. And so I followed that call and I met my husband Paul on day two of the conference. And we ended up both road tripping back from Bend to Portland, where we both had, our flights out and back home. He was living in upstate New York in Syracuse at the time. I was living in my hometown in Richmond, Virginia. And we took like a day to road trip back together, and that's still, it's so funny because we just had our 6 year anniversary, and so we were doing some reflecting, and we still that's still for both of us one of the most fun days of our entire life. That day that we had together. So, and then we proceeded to have a long distance relationship for a year and a half, going to and from New York every weekend, every other weekend, which was just wild. And we got married 2 years after we started dating. And like I said, then we've been married six. So
So he made the jump then to come to Richmond, obviously.
he
Like after
did.
a year and
Yeah.
a half long distance. Okay, you're like, okay,
Yep.
next level. I love this story. So that's selfishly why I asked. Because like you have a unique way of meeting your husband. You followed that poll. It's just a cool
Yeah.
message in that. And someday I feel like you two with or without kids. That would be sweet to recreate. Have you gone back together?
We have been back to the Oregon coast, but not to Bend.
That would have been
So, yeah, we went back to the Oregon coast with my mom and her partner, and that was really fun. Yeah.
epically beautiful out there.
Yes, it is.
Um, okay, cool. So, do you both work? Tell me a little bit more about like present day work situations, and if you want to add any background for you and your husband of like school or anything that you feel like is fun to share or important to share. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So I was a doctor of physical therapy for 13 years of clinical practice. And of course, that was many years of college to get me there as well. And I just kept waiting to love it and never did. And I obviously, as people know from your introduction, I decided to get my coach training. That was on the heels of my own like huge eat, pray, love journey to figure out what I wanted to do. If I quit my job, I went backpacking around the world by myself. I realized what I wanted to do. I came back, I signed up for the training, and it was kind of just a crazy, wild time of my life because I was engaged, I was planning my wedding, I was in the coach training. I remember driving back from our honeymoon and with my feet on the dash and listening to one of the coach trainings on the way back from my honeymoon. So it was just like
Yeah.
there was a lot of things going on, a lot of transition at that time in my life. And I kept on waiting. I had this really rigid mindset of I needed coach, my coaching business to replace my PT income before I would make the jump. And I got to a place where it felt like it was literally killing me inside to continue in my PT career, and I just realized that I needed a bridge job and that I couldn't continue to wait. And so I ended up getting a job for a mental health company as a mental health coach, and so essentially I ended up doing coaching full time between my own business and the mental health company, which has been a huge blessing. And then when I had my son, I would say I work probably somewhere in the 20 to 30 hour a week range. But I have arranged it in such a way where I do a lot of my work asynchronously. So a lot of it is woven in to, I'm caring for my son, I'm going for a walk, I'm returning coaching messages while I am caring for him simultaneously. So yeah, that's a little bit of my work background at this point. I am a coach for highly sensitive women who are coaches, leaders, entrepreneurs, and really helping them navigate that internal experience of being a highly sensitive person in a leadership position, and all of the activation and the triggers that can come up around that. And yeah, I love it. I love it so much. And I often think about like what the heck I would do if I had not made this leap before I became a mom. I think about so often how it would not have allowed me to mother the way that I want to mother, the way I feel so passionately about. And I'm so grateful that I have made a career switch into a career that not only fits me better just as a person with my own gifts, with my own abilities, but also that allows me to mother my son and to really allow my work to be molded around my life and not the other way around has been really important for me in this season of life.
Hmm. Okay. Two things I want to name before I keep asking you questions. Shameless plug, I've had the honor, even like when we were just starting out, we had to like coach each other in the training program, but I've been coached by Kim before. And then even recently with my own business, hired you and we did the Voxer, the asynchronous voice memo
Hmm.
coaching. Um, like it just, I can't even imagine you doing anything else. You
Mm.
really have such a gift for it. And the depth of feeling seen when I'm with you and the angles you see people. I feel
Mm.
so privileged to be witnessed by you and to have had that
Oh.
experience with you. And I love that you brought up the motherhood aspect with your into coaching journey because I think the women that are watching are going to have all different backgrounds of work. Some work part-time, full-time, or stay at home full-time. And I think it can be really helpful to see different ways other women do it. And if it ever feels appropriate to share more of how you set that up. But I think, you gave enough of a glimpse of like, I'm doing this on the go. It can be possible to do
Yeah.
it around parenting, honoring your values of how I know you want to be a present mother physically throughout the day, but also working. So I love hearing different ways that you can mother and work at the same time in a way that works for you. So I'm glad.
Yeah, and before I will share this little bit. Before I became a mom, it was one of my largest fears was
Hmm.
like a career pause or what I was going to do. Or, on the other end, it was kind of this fear of, am I even going to want to work anymore? Is it not going to feel the same? Am I going to like kind of scrap my business that I've spent 6 years building and putting all my blood, sweat, and tears into? Am I gonna resent it? Am I going to actually not like mothering and really wish that I could work full time? I had no idea, like there were so many things around that I just didn't know. And ultimately, I think the combination for each person is so different, but the combination that I've been able to find and the flexibility that I have with doing the work I love on the schedule that I want and on my own terms has been a combination that I feel only adds to my mothering, my line, and I know you and I talk about this a lot, Beth, is like I'm not willing to do anything that takes away from my son and my focus on him, especially in these most important first 3 years. And I feel like as long as I am doing something that allows me to be a more present, better version of myself, and is adding to me as a human, as a mother, I call it a win.
Yes. Yes. And it's the unpredictability. I remember having those conversations with you because, we both have friends who have become mothers and either like loved working full time and then completely dropped
Hmm.
their careers and then vice versa, like everything in between. It is unpredictable because you're changed so drastically when you enter motherhood on every level.
Hmm.
And ultimately, you knew that, and feel free to speak to this more. Like I just remember these conversations, like you would be a better mother if you kept
Hmm.
working.
Yeah,
Not all day, every day, but
right.
there's this part of coaching and running your business that gives you life,
Yes.
and not having that at all wouldn't have been good. And the reason I bring that up is I love saying this to women on any and all levels, but especially career. There's no one right way to be a mother.
Mm.
No one right way to like pause work, do it. Like you have to do ultimately what works best for you. And in your situation, you're like, actually do need to work. You maybe thought it could be better to work full time or part time, or I don't, but it's like you chose the path that felt best for you. And I just want to encourage the moms watching that there's always a way to figure it out with your partner, with family,
Yeah.
with something.
Yeah, and I think all of that is so true. And I want to even add to it and say that it's not fixed. Like I'm starting to feel like I want to cut back on my hours a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm really starting to feel that very strongly in my system. My body is letting me know that, and that's fine. Like I don't need to be, and I mean, obviously I know that not everybody has the flexibility to do that. And I'm very privileged to be able to do that. However, I really do believe like it's a constant tuning in, it's a constant tuning in of like what's true for me right now, what's true for me in this season, and how can I continue to pivot and continue to honor those things. Because I don't view it as like, okay, I have dialed into the perfect amount of work and mothering, and it's going to be that way forever and ever. Like it's going to ebb and flow with different seasons.
Such a good permission slip. You're not stuck. Just because you said, I like it this way. Well, we all know how this shifts in motherhood every couple months, even, especially when you have a, under 1 year old. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that you've just given yourself that permission of this attunement, and this is no longer feeling okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to consider a pivot of some sort.
Yeah.
Um, Bringing it back to motherhood and the adjustment, I would love for you to share anything that you want about your journey into motherhood.
Mm.
Like the decision to
So,
become a mom. Like, is that something you
yeah,
wanted? And like, yeah.
yeah. I know I've shared this with you, Beth, but um, becoming a mother is really the primary thing that I've wanted my entire life. From the time that I was a really little girl, I was just extremely nurturing, is the word that I would use. And we would have baby animals at our house, and I would nurse them back to health from the brink of death. Or, there would be like a runt of a litter, and I would stay up all night with it and feed it milk out of a bottle and like make sure that it lived. And um, I would carry around baby dolls like well past the time of like social appropriateness of the age, like, carry them with me on vacation. I have pictures of me at Niagara Falls with the like funny little raincoats on and the baby doll underneath the raincoat. I mean, it was just it was always what I wanted to do. It was always in my mind, it was always in my heart. And what ended up happening was I got married later in life than I would have been my choice. Obviously, everybody's timing is everybody's timing, and whatever everyone wants to do is fine. But for me, I would have preferred to have gotten married earlier. I got married at 35, and I wasn't willing to compromise and settle on marrying someone I didn't want to marry just for the sake of being married. Um, and that just really, kind of created kind of a crunch on timeline of having kids. So when we got married, both Paul, my husband, and myself said, okay, let's try immediately because of my age. My husband is actually 4.5 years younger than me. So he didn't have quite as much of a crunch as me, but he had always wanted kids too, and said, okay, let's try. So we started trying immediately, and month after month after month after month after month after month, it's no, 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 not pregnant, not pregnant, not pregnant. Um, I was never one of those people that like incessantly took pregnancy tests because I just felt like I would know eventually anyway. So I kind of count that as a blessing that I wasn't like poring over that. But of course, it's a very heartbreaking thing when you have wanted that your entire life and it just isn't happening for you. It was 4 years of that, and I tried everything imaginable. I mean, you were with me during this journey. I'm not saying this like to toot my own horn, but I have literally never heard of anybody that has done all the things that I've done in order to conceive, like going from eating really an entire diet of only beans, like no sugars, not even from fruit, like only beans, beans and meat essentially for like over a year, no alcohol for like 4 years. I still don't drink alcohol because I got so used to not doing it. I did mind body connection, coaching for fertility coaching. I worked with holistic naturopathic doctors. I spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for functional medicine doctors. Just anything, you name it. I completely went upside down, topsy turvy of every cleaning product in our entire house. I tossed for like, more holistic, things that weren't endocrine disruptors. Like I changed my entire line of like makeup and, everything, just everything in my life from top to bottom was like solely focused on trying to make this happen and trying to make it happen naturally because that's what I was hoping for. And finally, by the time that I hit 39, I was like, I think the only way this is going to happen is if we do some sort of fertility something. So we met with a fertility doctor and they sort of walked us through either IUI or IVF. And just based on the time crunch and the stats and the numbers, I didn't even want to do IUI because the stats were so much lower than IVF. And I didn't feel like I had the time really to waste on going through multiple rounds of it. I also didn't want to get myself in the position to have the heartbreak of doing a procedure like that and it not working multiple times and then like not trusting my body even less than I already was after 4 years of infertility. And so anyway, we went through the process of IVF, which was I can't even tell you how difficult that was for me physically, mentally, emotionally. I still have pictures on my phone of like my stomach just being black and blue from the injections. Um, trying to go on a vacation and having to pack like massive amounts of needles and medicines and um, things like that. And obviously the hormone surges everywhere of the emotions of like, I remember that my husband would come home from work and I would be sitting on the back deck and he would just find me sobbing and be like, are you okay? What's going on? And I'm like, I don't know, like, um,
Yeah.
it was a crazy time. And we went through, I did one egg retrieval and then we did one transfer and we got pregnant with my son Zayden on the first transfer. Thankfully, I didn't have to go through any failures there or any miscarriages, which I'm super grateful for. And um, that resulted in a challenging pregnancy. And it's sort of been challenging in a lot of ways since. So I feel like I've sort of been in, like 2.5 years of really, well, I guess you could say larger. It may be like 6.5 years of challenge with motherhood, my motherhood journey.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that you shared that part. Because I mean, how many people do we know that even have talked about their fertility journey? I feel like you don't always hear about it
Yeah.
from everyone, but I know that the hardships that you went through and the heartbreak to get to where you are, even to like giving into the medical side of things, you had
Mm-hmm.
to finally like surrender. That just was a whole thing in of itself. But what I'm getting at is I know that what you shared will speak to quite a few women watching who, whether it's miscarriages or infertility, can relate to a part of that long journey to get pregnant. So thank
Yeah. I know of nothing more tender, honestly. I haven't I haven't felt that deep of an ache over anything else in life. So
you.
anybody that's listening that can relate to any part of my story in that, I hope you feel even slightly 2% more like seen and understood through that. So,
Mhm. Never heard you say that, like the ache. And
yeah.
you don't know until you know,
Hmm.
comprehend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Quick, like, give us anything from your backstory, growing up in Richmond to, pre-motherhood. I know you mentioned, becoming a PT and you did a little eat, pray, love journey and always wanted to be a mother. Is there anything else from childhood into getting married and becoming a mom
Mhm.
that feels important to share or unique to your story?
Yeah, I think there are a couple other elements that perhaps like when I think about maybe I just think shaped me as a person, um, that might be worth mentioning. Um, and the first is just that I grew up in a very, as you know, Beth, like a very strong faith-oriented household, Christian faith-oriented household. And I would at this point in my life call it a very like fundamentalist faith.
Mhm.
And it's something that like my relationship with God has undergone a really big metamorphosis, and it's something that I have shed, a lot of layers from, and really kind of coming to a place of owning my own beliefs. But that was a huge, tremendous part of my upbringing and part of my identity for a very long time.
Yeah. I love that word that you chose, metamorphosis. It's like, oh, yes. It's like, and faith, your religious identification or your faith identification is such a, for many, monumental part of their identity. So when you undergo a tremendous shift within that, I feel like a part of you changes. So,
Yeah, a
yeah.
completely different version of yourself, it feels like on the other side. So there's that I think really informs a lot of the lens that I view the world through, to be honest. And then the other piece of that I think is that my sister was a drug addict and alcoholic for 15 years of my childhood starting when I was 9. And so
Mm.
it's so funny. I've really come to the realization in my life that I am as amazing of a coach as I am, and that is my career path because of that.
Really?
And I know for sure that it is a trauma response. I know that it is. And also it's a gift. So it is both of those things, and you
Mhm.
cannot like separate one from the other. Um, you know, going through all of that and made me an exceptional space holder, and I know that me being such a good space holder is actually a trauma response. And like I said, it's also a wonderful gift and thing that I can offer back in service. And it would be something different if like it's a trauma response and I wasn't getting anything out of it and I wasn't conscious of it and I was just reflexively doing it. But I love it simultaneously and it gives me so much. So that's the gift part of it as well. But yeah, I for the longest time couldn't view life except through the lens of, my complex trauma from that and my background, my history, and I've done so much work around all of that that it's really been within that, I would say the past 2 years or maybe even 3 years that I noticed myself not even thinking about that anymore. And some of my newer friends don't even know that about me because it's not something I mention anymore. It's not something that I bring up.
Yeah.
Um, and that's how I know that I've really gotten to a different place in my healing with it, which feels really, really good.
Mm.
Mhm.
Wow, yeah. Another thing that, thank you for sharing that as you peel back layers about people, you think you saw like, oh, Kim was a PT and she's a mom and she works this like cool little life around her business. Like she's also, you've been through it in more ways
Mhm.
than you're even sharing now, but I'm like, it's such a gift to hear more. And this is especially another thing that I sadly know touches many people's lives, including my own, being around addiction of some sort.
Mhm.
One thing you mentioned that I didn't plan on, I was like, I want to share this.
Mhm.
A bit of a caveat. It wasn't part of the plan of this discussion, but you touched on with your sister's history, how it's made you, how did you word it? I was like, really? I never knew that
Mhm.
part about you. Like that led into coaching. How did you
Mm.
like that?
That me being a space holder, like an exceptional space holder, is a trauma response. That.
Yes. Yes. And there, the piece that I wanted to share is because I had a mom's gathering last night, and one of the women there, um, she's really upset about, she's had three babies. They weren't the births. There was hardship through her journey. And
Mm-hmm.
instead of being natural births, there were some cesareans and some emergency things. And she's now in a birth working profession and is like still hasn't let that go. That
Mm-hmm.
there's this part of her that's like, I wish it could have been different.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, but the other moms were there. Like that's the gift of community. We're all like, you would probably never have become a doula.
Mm-hmm.
There's a good chance
Mm-hmm.
had you not wanted to be such an amazing advocate and known the pain of what happened. And like that was what lit the fire under her belt. So to your story, it just whenever you share that, I was like, yes, I just felt like that was a message that needed to be shared with at least someone watching this of like, we all have shit that happens to us and trials and it's never a waste. And I loved hearing that part of your story. I never heard it phrased like that before. And I was like, wow, yeah. Like that allowed
Yeah.
you to become who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I remember a day, and I think it was something powerful about this coming through my father specifically, but I remember a day when my father looked at me and he was like, Kim, for better or for worse, like you are who you are because a lot of this was in response to your sister being the way that she was. And I just had this moment where I was like, huh, yeah, like and really seeing a lot of opening and widening my perspective to see a lot of the good things that came out of that and not just the hardship.
Yes,
Hmm.
I actually remember that conversation because it was like
Hmm.
a little shift in perspective, like
Hmm.
a new way from your dad. Yeah,
Hmm.
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So, to transition into more of your mothering journey, start by asking the question. If you've been watching the podcast, you know the question. So, Kim, when you think about your mothering journey, if we really knew you, what will we know about your mothering journey? Like what will go?
Yeah, I think you would know how freaking hard it's been.
Hmm.
Like when I think about you, you really know me. You know how hard it's been.
Right, right.
Like if somebody doesn't really know me, they just kind of see on the surface like, oh, she's got a really cute, fun, busy 1-year-old and
Attachment parenting, rocking
yeah,
eggs,
right.
breastfeeding, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Crunchy mom, still breastfeeding, past a
natural.
year, natural, all the things. And like those who really know me know that it's been freaking hard. It's been a train wreck most of the time, you know? Um,
Oh,
so we had an unexpected NICU stay for a week when he was born, which I feel like I did all of the things to prepare for. I wanted a natural, unmedicated birth. I took so many classes. I did all of the things. And it's like I was preparing for the birth, but nobody like, never once in my mind did it come into my head that there could be something challenging as far as his health when he was born because everything was normal, right? And
right.
all of my prenatal care. And when he came out, I just remember this moment where the doctor came into the room after 26 hours of labor. I was finally eating food for the first time and like having literally run marathon, right? The
Yeah.
hardest marathon you will ever run. I don't think my brain was even online and functioning. And the doctor comes in and he's like, your baby is very sick. And I'm like, excuse me? Like, what? Like, and he's like, yeah, we're taking your baby to the NICU and like starts going on. I just was like, like the Peanuts, the principal, like wah 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 wah.
Oh,
That's like what it sounded like in my head. I'm like, what is? And I mean, I just
uh-huh.
remember looking at my husband and be like, do you understand what's happening? Because I don't understand what's happening. I just pushed out a perfectly healthy baby. Like, what is happening right now?
Hmm.
So anyway, long story short, and you know a lot more details about all of that, but it was a week in the NICU that was extremely traumatic for all of us. When we came home, because of the NICU stay and them introducing a lot of things that I would have never chosen to do, like I wanted to exclusively breastfeed. I didn't want a bottle to touch his lips, at least for 3 weeks until he got really used to breastfeeding. They introduced a bottle without my consent. There were lots of things that happened. They gave him formula, all this other things. It kind of put a wrench in my breastfeeding journey. I ended up having to triple feed for 3 months of the first 3 months. And so when I say triple feed, for people who don't know what I mean that I would breastfeed and then I would bottle feed and I would pump. So I was doing all three of those things for over 3 months' time. I calculated at one point in time that I was feeding for 20 hours out of the day, out of 24 hours. So I had 4 hours that I wasn't doing something with feeding in 30-minute increments, and that's all I had. In the midst of that, I had a child that had extreme colic, refused to be put down. And so like even while I was pumping, I couldn't put him down. Like so I had to, for example, if my mom went on a vacation, my husband went back to work. I had to have somebody with me 24/7 because I could not put him down and be pumping. I remember my sister-in-law had to come into town or else that would have severed our breastfeeding relationship because I couldn't have pumped. It was that severe.
Hmm.
Um, he had to have a tongue tie, 4 different tongue ties, lasered at that time. So we were also, doing all of that with feeding at the same time as doing all of these awful stretches. Like I said, the extreme colic. He also had torticollis. So I was going to um, chiropractor appointments, PT appointments, craniosacral therapy appointments. All the while, I at one point he was screaming for upwards of 8 hours a day of like not relenting screaming. Um, my husband, I didn't get any paid maternity leave, neither did my husband. And he took 2 weeks off unpaid, and 1 week of that was spent in the NICU. So I had 1 week of partner support amidst all of this, which I am so passionate about more support for mothers based on my experience, because I think it drove me, all of these experiences, obviously, and the lack of support surrounding it drove me into some pretty severe PPD and PPA, um, that I think could have been preventable had I had more support throughout all of this. So anyway, that was just sort of the beginnings of everything. That was the beginning, that everything went off with a bang, and then it just became more and more clear over time that my son was a highly sensitive being, and that he had some sensory integration challenges, and that his sensory integration challenges are actually directly opposed to mine. So I have sensory processing disorder, I am sensory avoidant, and he is very much sensory seeking. So it just flies directly in the face of my needs. And so that's been an extreme challenge for me as well, of he's always making noise, always seeking out stimulus, and I am trying to avoid noise and avoid stimulus, and I am being climbed over and touched 24/7. And I know a lot of this is like normal child behavior, but it's even, increased with a child who has SPD. So, yeah, that doesn't even cover the challenge, but I think that gives you enough of a glimpse to recognize that, if someone really knows me, they know that it hasn't been like, oh my gosh, she had this really long, arduous fertility journey, and then you got what you wanted, and now it's all rainbows and butterflies. It has not been. It has not been that way. Yeah.
No, that was a really good synopsis. I'm
Mm.
impressed to capture like such a wild year. Well, you just
Yeah.
started a couple months ago,
Yeah.
time of the recording. What have this just is something I wanted to ask you, like, what have you learned from Zayden?
Hmm. Yeah.
What has he taught you?
I'm trying not to get too emotional. I know it's fine if I do, but
Yeah.
um, amidst all of the challenge, I've never known a purer love.
Mm.
It's just the way that he looks at me, the way that he looks at life. Um, and it breaks my heart, because I tell my husband, I I think the thing that we care so much about having kids in general and being parents in general is just this renewed perspective that you lose as adults. This renewed perspective of like how easy it is to make him laugh, how like joyful his laugh is, how like fully present he is, how when I screw up and I lose my temper and I make repair with him and I feel so remorseful, and I tell him like, "Hey, this had nothing to do with you. Mommy is really tired. I got frustrated. You are perfectly lovable. I love you so much. Do you forgive me?" That he gives me this look like, "It's okay, mom." Like, and just, like I'm already over it. Like, whatever, like the
Oh,
pureness. There's this purity
yeah.
that I have never experienced in anything else. And I know that I won't unless I have another child again, because it's something that breaks my heart to think of him losing. Like when I think of the world changing him, I think of that and I think of losing that. But what he's given me is the opportunity to see those things, to see through those eyes, and to know that ultimately each one of us has that inside of us somewhere,
Yes.
however deep it may be buried, that we all are good inside in that way.
Ooh, so beautiful. Did you
Yeah.
expect that to come out of us? No. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. You just said it so beautifully of the purity and the presence. And you really, unless you spend time with little kids regularly and are truly present with them enough, you don't know that gift. And there's something so healing about it.
Mm. It is.
Reawakens a part of you that has been dormant. And it is sad. I think about that a lot in mothering. Like our children are always beckoning us back to presence. And
Yeah.
even in the hard moments that I'm resisting, I'm like, if I wasn't resisting this so much and was just
Mm,
being with it,
mhm.
there'd be less suffering. Maybe not complete absence of it, but it'd be less. And I think um, that's one of the many gifts of children. But thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's taken me, Zayden is 14 months old, and I feel like I'm just settling in. Like it
Mm,
feels like I'm just now getting to the point where I can really like go at his pace and okay, like we're gonna go on a walk and you're gonna spend 30 minutes looking at these flowers and I'm just gonna be here with you.
uh,
And that's fine. I don't feel the need to, not that I'm doing this all the time. I'm not guru enlightened status here, but like I I don't feel the need to like distract myself and be on my phone or like I don't as much have this rushed, okay, let's get on to the next thing feeling anymore. And that's part of the reason I think I'm being called to slow down because I feel like I am starting to like settle in for
yeah.
and it's taken me that long. And that's okay, because I was 39 when I became a mom and I'm 40 I'm 41 now. And it's a lot of years of productivity to unlearn. It's a lot of years of capitalism to unlearn. So yeah, I feel like I'm just settling in.
Mm. Gosh, you just like what you were just sharing, like my mind went a million ways. I couldn't agree with you more. And yeah, the very unlearning of our way of being after so long. Naturally, it's going to take forever. And some people never even notice what you have. Like
Hmm.
the way of life that our children call us to, like the invitation to notice the ant crawling on the blade
Mm-hmm.
glass, the little crack in a rock, and you're like, we're so, come on, honey, let's go. We're trying to get somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
We're always in a hurry. And then you're like, really? 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 Like when I
Mm.
actually remember to pause, not enlightened status, like status over here too, but when I remember to pause, I'm almost like giddy inside that my daughter or my son would notice the smallest little speck and it brings them so much joy. And to witness that in them and then to feel it myself, it's a treasure. Like you see life in a new way through
Yeah,
becoming a mom.
exactly. Yeah. Mm.
Okay, I have another like little twist in the conversation, but it relates back to the theme of masking and unmasking ourselves. So, if someone was to just meet you, Kim, maybe you've had people tell you their opinion about like, when I meet you, I thought this, or maybe not, but what do you think people think of you on the outside that don't really know you deeply?
Oh, this is a great question. I haven't asked anybody this recently, but
Okay.
I think the thing that most people typically tell me is that they think I'm really intense. Um, and that's okay. I am intense. Fair, you know? Um, I think that's the thing that I get more than anything is that I'm very intense or like maybe like very serious or like mean. I feel like people think I'm mean a lot, which I think that is very far off actually. But I think the intense thing is what I get more than anything.
I'll show it. What's your resting face look like? Maybe that's why, if you're not. And Kim, we've talked, we're literally just talking about this in DMs. I'm the golden retriever, like, talk to me. And you're
Hmm.
introverted, sensory
Yeah.
avoidant. So it's not like you're just walking around like, open up for business, everyone talk to me.
Yeah.
You know? Oh, that's interesting.
And I can be incredibly open and warm and loving and kind. I am those things when I'm in a smaller group and when I know someone. And it's just really hard for me in a large group or if I don't know you or I'm not as familiar. So it's nothing personal about the other person. It's all having to do with like my level of comfort. So,
Yes. Yes, 1000%. Um, so they might see intensity,
hmm
seriousness, the word you said, the second one.
hmm hmm
seriousness and then that you might look mean. Okay,
Yeah.
the intensity might be right, but is there any way that they would get those things wrong about you?
I mean, I think I do tend to be serious. That's one of the reasons that my husband and I work so well together is because he's not at all. He makes me laugh more than any other person. And so he brings like that necessary levity to me. And
Oh.
levity is something that I have been really consciously working on, but I think I can for sure be serious person. Yeah.
What do you like mentioning, so continuing with that thought for just a moment, the three words you use to describe yourself, is there anything about that you wish people knew? Like if they're seeing you and there's truth and there's nothing wrong with coming across as intense and serious or seeming like something's wrong or mad.
Hmm.
Like, is there anything about that that you wish people knew?
Hmm. Hmm. I think I just wish people knew. I think people this may go into a little bit of like another thing that people perceive about me is that I think people perceive that I am like really calm and really grounded and that lots of things come very easily for me and my internal experience is very different from that. So I think what I wish people knew is that my internal experience is potentially very different than what you're seeing on the outside. I am a very anxious person, like very anxious person. I've been going through some like postpartum therapy, and they use the GAD-7, which is a anxiety tool, and each time we do it, she's like, "You're in the like real high range. Like, I think this is just your normal." And I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel any different than it normally does for me." So
Yeah,
I
right.
think I wish people knew that, if I come off as aloof or introverted or serious or whatever, like that a lot of it, something that I have felt my entire life is that people, I'm very misunderstood
Hmm.
versus my own internal experience. And I've always had, especially as a neurodivergent person, I've always had a very hard time getting to feel like people truly understand and get my internal experience of the world.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Curious if there's any way that you have been able to notice those as strengths in motherhood,
Mm.
your
The
intensity or your more serious nature, that those have come through and translated into strengths in parenting.
Yeah, I honestly don't think that my son and my husband would corroborate this and say he says all the time, he's like, I don't know what we would do without you. I think that intensity, my neurodivergence, all of those things has set me up to kind of be a bulldog about getting Zayden the care that he needs. And I don't think that I I don't think he would have gotten the care that he's needed throughout this first year with all of these intense needs had I not had matched that intensity. Um, and I I also feel like, my medical background really served me so well in that, but it's also kind of like my dogged determination and intensity with like I am going to figure this out come hell or high water. I'm going to get my son the help that he needs. I'm going to get me the help that I need to continue breastfeeding. I'm going to like it's just it's a intensity in my determination to get him and myself the help that we need to be supported and to thrive as much as we possibly can. Um, that if that wasn't part of my personality, I think that we would have just fallen through the cracks, to be honest.
Mm. Yep. Thanks for sharing that.
Mhm.
Like when I think about sometimes traits that aren't how do I say this? Like not even less than ideal because I love who you are. But when you're thinking about, oh, she's just bubbly and perfect, like I think it can be easy for every woman to relate to this experience of like having attributes that we've had since maybe we were young. They're
Mm.
part of you that we've judged, or to the world, they're like, is less than ideal or not what other people want from us. And to see is, I think this comes with maturity and becoming more comfortable in our own skin to see the gift in them and to embrace them and to especially notice where they could be superpowers within parenting too. Just to be in
Yeah.
a new relationship with them. And I think parenting has been one of the avenues that been able to come to terms with. I was just thinking about it today. Like I've always been highly emotional. I know that
Mm.
we talked about this.
Mm.
And as much as I still want to judge it or can make things a little more complicated if my kids are having big emotions, I know that it's also a strength of mine for the work
Mm.
that I do, for the way I am in friendships, but especially when it comes to parenting. If I channel it the right
Yeah.
way, it can actually be a really awesome superpower in parenting. So something you said just sparked that. I wanted to add that to the
Yeah.
conversation.
I love that you did. I feel like isn't that always the way that it's always two sides of the same coin. Like our greatest strengths are also our greatest weaknesses. That's
Mm,
always the way. And we just have to learn to um play with it and make it play into that strength, you know?
yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Something we talked about a little bit ago just popped up in my mind as like, I want to go a little deeper into it. So you talked about postpartum,
Mm.
and because I know you and part of your journey, I wondered if you could share just your personal heart on postpartum, because you had one
Mm.
week outside of the hospital care, and like obviously you're like that wasn't enough. Um, And I just know you have a heart for women having more support than that postpartum. And a lot of people,
Yeah.
it's almost like comical now. They're like, oh, my husband's going to be home for 2 weeks, or my mom's going to fly in for 1 week. And they literally think, especially the first time moms, you don't know until you know. But
Yeah.
they're like, that's going to be enough. I'll be fine. I'll have a
Mhm.
couple meals coming. And I'm like, we need a monumental shift. And not just like the healthcare system for pregnancy, that's one, but the postpartum care and the way we view it.
Yeah.
But yeah, if there's anything on that front related to postpartum and your journey or just your beliefs about ways we can improve or what we're missing, I would love to hear.
Oh, I could do like 2 hours on this one.
Part two?
Uh-huh. This is like this is so near and dear to my heart because as I mentioned earlier, I suffered with pretty severe PPD and PPA, as I know that you have even you saw and identified in me as well. Um, and like I said, I directly trace it back to lack of support. I think that the powers that be can want to write this off as purely hormonal, and the reality is it's more often than not from lack of support. Um, and I want to name that lack of support isn't a lack of support from my partner, from my husband, because he wants to not be supportive. It's because we live in an infrastructure and an entire system that does not support mothers, and he's out there busting his butt trying to provide for his family, and he's supporting the only way that he can. He's like doing everything that he can, and it's still not enough because we live in these systems that are so unsupportive, right? So gosh, I mean, as from my perspective, from my viewpoint of like if I could be in charge, what I would say is like needed. Um, I think pelvic floor physical therapy should be a given and paid for everybody that gives birth,
Hmm,
like automatic. I think lactation support should be automatic.
yeah.
I think that if I could go back and do it again, I would take if I knew that I wanted to breastfeed, I would take lactation classes before giving birth.
Mm.
For the first time. Obviously, I've done it for over a year now. Got it down now for the second time if I choose to do it. But like the
Yeah.
first time, having being in the NICU and having that trauma and trying to learn to breastfeed and not having things go well and the tongue tie and all of that. And obviously, I shared a little bit about the triple feeding journey. That's a really stressful time to be trying to figure all that out. So I would do, lactation support should be a given for anybody who wants to breastfeed. And then I also think that, you should have classes on the front end just the same as you have like birthing classes, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then I really think that, I did have a postpartum doula to the extent that we could afford one. Um, but I needed more.
Yeah.
And I think that people can go in, especially I needed more based on all the challenges that we experienced, but I think I would have needed more even without the challenge, right? I think that we can have this idea, just like you're saying, of like, oh, that'll be enough. Like people will be coming over, they'll be dropping off meals, they'll be whatever, whatever. But um, I don't think that you can adequately understand like the cataclysmic shift that happens when you become a mother. It is an entire shift in identity. You are no longer who you were before. There is literally no going back. There is it's just like I said, it's cataclysmic. That's the only way that I know how to say it. And I think that there needs to be infinitely more village support. There needs to be more village support. We need to be surrounded by I personally would love to see just like what you're building, Beth, like a village of mothers who can have real conversations, who can get down and dirty together, talking about the real stuff so that you don't feel so alone, so that you don't feel crazy. Because I'll be honest with you, like I said, I became a mother at 39, so I was late, and I feel like everyone else of my friends had already had kids.
Mhm.
And I felt like what ended up happening, which I feel so bad about now, of like, because how was I to know like what was happening before I had kids? And because we live in a society where um, I feel like what is normal is like, okay, I took my friends a postpartum meal, I
Mhm.
did my duty, and then it's like because you're in a different phase of life than me, we really don't see each other anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm not in the trenches like mothering with them. I don't see what's happening. I don't see what's going on, rather than this more communal village approach of like, okay, you're my people, you're in my village. And so, like, when you have a hardship, I may not be a mom, but I'm going to come and I'm going to support you. Right. And so, and I think people, we live in such an individualistic culture and mindset that we're not seeing that the support that we're giving to mothers is literally shaping the world that we are going to have in the future,
Mhm.
because the support that we give moms equals the nurture and care that they're able to give their babies, and that nurture and care that they're able to give their babies directly translates into that person's mental health for the future.
Yeah.
It's that important. And so when we are not supporting moms, we are not supporting the future of humanity. Like literally that's not a jump, people.
Oh,
And so when we are just like, "Oh, I dropped off my postpartum meal to you," and then we're wiping our hands clean, and we're putting all of the weight of rearing this child on one person's shoulders entirely, which still is the mother. It's never meant to be that way. It,
yeah.
it is never meant to be that way. I remember that I have a dear friend that is in Austria, and I told her about my postpartum journey and, the NICU and the healthcare expenses and, all of these things that were happening,
Yeah.
and that we got no postpartum, paid leave, and neither did my husband, and the amount of support and time off he got and all this stuff. And she literally started weeping. And
Oh,
she was like, I don't know how you're doing it. Like, I get over a year off paid. The government pays me a stipend when I have a baby.
awesome.
And my husband does too. Like, my husband gets that amount of time off as well. And so it's an entire infrastructure change that we need to have
Yeah.
of honoring and supporting mothers and understanding that when we take care of mothers, that literally betters the world. I know that that can sound like frou-frou and like, well, how is that the case? But I'm telling you that when we are more supported and we can nurture and care for, because like I see it in myself. I see it every single day when my husband is at work for 12 or 14 hours and I'm solo parenting for 12 or 14 hours, who my son gets as a mother by the end of the day isn't nearly as patient, isn't nearly as kind, isn't nearly as nurturing, right? Because I'm under resourced, I'm under supported. And and I'm somebody who is so aware,
Mhm.
right? I'm so incredibly aware and I can rein myself in very easily, and the moments where I do lose it are so few. And and yet, for someone who is uh, even less resourced than me, like not everybody is as resourced as I am. We need more support. We need more support for the mothers. And I would just say to people who have not yet become mothers, you need more support than you think you're going to need, you know, way
Couldn't
more.
be more. Yeah. Like, what I mean, like you said, it's like it could be another 2 hour thing.
Mhm.
I think that there's in the culture that we live in, Kim and I live in America and in the United States, there's still, I feel like the scales are starting to tip a little bit, but there's still so much pride in doing it all your own and the independence that I think sneakily plays a role in mothers, like partners, whatever, their decision to be like, I'll be fine. I don't need anything. We're okay. We're okay. Like there's shame and there's guilt in asking for help and interdependence, right? And being needy. Like can't be needy. We can't. Um, and even within motherhood, I remember first baby, I lived around my community at the time, and if people would offer to help, I did say yes to like family, but even within that, I still felt shame that I couldn't keep the house clean and make every meal and with a newborn. And I'm like, duh, like I knew all the things, but it's still like I had even prepared to do a postpartum a certain way and read the fourth trimester book, which I highly
Mhm.
recommend. And even then, I was still met with this mindset of like shame and guilt
Mhm.
that I couldn't win. It's like I was supposed to be resting during postpartum, and I wanted to honor that, but I still felt this pressure to do more, and I couldn't allow everyone to help me as much because what if they were judging me? Because I'm like, it's so effed up. And I think that this is a societal level, like
Right.
narrative in our heads. It's sneaky there. And I talk to so many moms still that are like struggling with asking for help,
Yeah.
even though we all know we need it. So it's like there has to be that shift too. Like we've got to, yeah, get over this judgment of being needy, and the entire infrastructure has to change.
Yeah, and I think um, you know, for a long time, and this, I struggled with being okay with hiring a nanny.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a big deal.
because I mean, there's lots of reasons to that, not just like the societal shame and guilt. But I think that there is, well, I'm mostly a stay-at-home mom. I mostly stay at home, so I shouldn't need the help, right? Um,
Dare you?
and like whatever help you need in order to be the mom that you want to be is whatever help you need, you know, period. End of sentence.
Period. Yep.
Um, and I think that so many things in life, I just go back to, okay, well, what's normal biology? Like, what's normal ancestrally? It's not normal to raise a child on your own.
Right, in isolation, like
It's
most.
not, yeah, it's not. So just remembering that whatever help you need is whatever help you need, and that these voices of shame and guilt and whatever myriad forms they like to plant themselves in your head, like I just love to remind mothers that those aren't coming from you, those are, if every single mother, if you were honest, those honest conversations that you have with moms, Beth, like I bet you everything that I have that every single mom experiences that. And what does it tell you if every single mom experiences that? It's not a personal thing, it's a collective thing. It's an oppressive culture thing. And so you can just rest assured, like, it's not a default or deficiency within yourself. It's something being imposed on the outside, right? Of these sociocultural expectations and the way that we're really not living in harmony with our design.
Yes, yes, yes.
Mhm.
Like yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. And I hope that the moms that are hearing that message, like you feel a sense of relief in Kim's words, that like there is actually nothing wrong with you, that you're struggling or that you struggle with asking for help or any of the things that we were talking about. It's collective. It's felt by all, if we were really being honest. Really being honest.
Yeah.
Along those same lines, I wondered as we wrap up today, um, if there were, if you had any other messages for mothers that felt present, felt on your heart to share,
Mm.
aside from what you just did, what would
Yeah.
what would they be?
I actually have one that's coming in pretty strong. What's coming in pretty strong that I want to share is that for the longest time, especially with how hard we tried for my son, I had this expectation in my head of like, just what I've shared. Like, I always wanted to be a mom. I tried so hard for him. So the moment when he comes, I should feel nothing except for grateful. I should feel nothing except for overjoyed. I should feel nothing except for just so grateful, because I know so many people that have gone through IVF and still never gotten a child, right? Or had a lot of field transfers or whatever it is, right? I should feel nothing except for profound gratitude and overwhelming love and all of these things. Um, and I felt so much guilt. Talking about guilt, this is just a little different flavor of guilt. I felt so much guilt for the longest time that I wasn't enjoying motherhood, that I honestly didn't feel bonded to my son for a really long time.
Mhm.
Based on all the traumas and everything that I experienced, you hear of people that have this immediate, like, oh my gosh, I'm just so overwhelmed with love for my child. Like, immediately, that was not my experience. And I don't think people talk about that enough.
Mhm.
Um, like, I feel that now, but I did not feel that, in the initial throes of everything. And I had so much guilt that I didn't feel this overwhelming sense of gratitude. I had many months where I was like, what the F did I just do? Like, did I make a mistake here? Like, did I go through all of this? Like, I was duped. Like,
Oh,
and then I felt like such immense shame and guilt because of that, right? And this is the stuff that people don't talk about.
yeah.
Like, I'm somebody that, like, for better or worse, I have a very easy time being vulnerable and sort of sharing stuff like this. And because I've shared stuff like this, I've been met with, oh my gosh, me too. But that's only once I've opened up and I've cleared the air
Yeah.
and I've said something like that, right? People don't talk about this stuff enough. Um, so really, I want to share with people, and like I said, like, I have such a beautiful relationship with my son now. I view things as a blessing, and I feel settled in, and I'm extremely bonded to him now, and I love him more than life itself. I wouldn't change anything. But all of those emotions and feelings and sensations of the first year, like, they were okay and they were part of the journey, right? And I just wish that I had heard more of that in order to have it be more normalized, so I didn't have to feel so much shame and guilt about it.
So good. It's like you're navigating motherhood on top of struggles, and every mom has some sort of struggle. You had quite a bit in the very beginning and to present, and on top of that, there was this hidden massive struggle of the shame and guilt that you
Yeah.
feel like you couldn't norm. I mean, you talked about it with friends, but like, just that's a massive weight.
Yeah.
That just it breaks my heart that moms do feel that, and they feel like they can't talk about it. It feels like it has to stay hidden in secret, and you're just freaking struggling. And then there's all the postpartum emotions and hormones, and just the isolation and the aloneness that I think so many moms feel at different phases of motherhood, and they are too afraid to talk about it.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
for those of us, you and I, who aren't afraid to talk about it, I feel like
Mm.
it's our responsibility in the places that we feel safe, like here. I'm so grateful for this conversation to keep talking about it, to open the other voices of more moms for that collective healing and witnessing. It matters so much. So if you are
Yeah.
listening and you are willing to talk about it, talk more. Talk more,
Yeah.
whatever way that looks like to you, because we have to normalize it all, because it's all normal. That's the truth.
Yeah.
I never even heard about postpartum rage until a podcast a year ago, some psychologist, and I was like, that's actually a thing, because I felt that some days and I thought I was crazy and I
Hmm.
like, oh,
Yep.
and all the things I keep hearing, like, oh, I didn't know that was normal. I didn't know even now, 5.5 years. So it only comes from one woman being brave enough to share. And
Yeah.
that's the heart of these podcasts. And Kim, thank you for sharing. I love your story. I love you. You've been so resilient through it all, leaning into different facets of who you are. It's been a true joy getting to meet you pre-marriage into the motherhood, and I really appreciate you coming on to share. And I feel like we could have a part two, let's be honest, but
I would love that. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
thank you all for listening to episode 5. Mwah.